Good evening. You're watching the main news on HKIBC. I'm Chloe Feng. Here's a look at tonight's headlines. Top political advisors meet in Beijing as China starts the two-session gathering. 3 former members of the Hong Kong Alliance are convicted of failing to provide police with information that was requested. And a fire at a fuel storage depot in Jakarta has killed at least 15 people. China's two-sessions gathering has opened in Beijing with the head of the country's main political advisory body hailing the past 5 years as extraordinary. Wang Yang noted that China overcame complex challenges as it worked towards national rejuvenation.
It's that time of year again for the elite of Chinese politics to meet in the capital and discuss social and political issues. The top political advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, or CPPCC, opened its annual session this afternoon in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing. President Xi Jinping and other senior officials were present, along with over 2,000 CPPCC members. In delivering his last work report, CPPCC Chairman Wang Yang described the past 5 years as extraordinary. During that time, he said Beijing effectively navigated through complex international situations and challenges and built a moderately prosperous society. Wang mentioned the support by Hong Kong deputies in promoting the implementation of the national security law, the electoral overhaul that ensured patriots run the city, and the development of the Greater Bay Area. He said several cross-strait seminars and exhibitions were held to enhance connections with Taiwan, but Wang noted there's still room for improvement in various areas. The CPPCC gathering marked the start of China's largest annual political event, the so-called two sessions.
Chief Executive Zhang Li has flown to Beijing for the National People's Congress. It will be a whirlwind visit, but he will return to the capital before the session ends. Janice Low reports.
Zhang Li headed to Beijing this afternoon to attend his first National People's Congress meeting. He said he's inspired to be present at the opening ceremony. Li returns home on Monday, but will visit the capital again before the session ends to meet mainland officials to strengthen ties. NPC delegates will have to find a successor to Tam Yu-chung, Hong Kong's sole representative in the Standing Committee. Tam announced earlier that he would not seek another term. DAB chairwoman Starry Lee is hotly tipped to fill Tam's shoes, but she faces a challenge from Stanley Ng, who heads the Federation of Trade Unions. Former Chief Executive Lang Chenyang, meanwhile, is seeking re-election as Vice Chairman of the National Committee of the CPPCC.
All the National Committee members of CPPCC have been handpicked. They're representative and they're very capable people. They have a wide range of expertise, and I'm sure they could contribute not just to the work of CPPCC, but through the CPPCC to the entire country.
With the SAR's first chief executive Tong Chi-hua stepping down, Lang is expected to be the only Hong Kong person serving as vice chairman of the CPPCC National Committee. Janice Low, HKIBC.
China has defended draft legislation that enables it to take countermeasures against countries that undermine its interests. The spokesman of the National People's Congress also said Hong Kong has benefited from the national security law.
In remarks on the eve of the opening of the National People's Congress in Beijing, spokesman Wang Chao hailed the enactment of the national security law in Hong Kong as an important milestone in the practice of one country, two systems.
国家安全得到有力保障，社会秩序迅速恢复。
National security is effectively protected, social order is resumed rapidly, the rule of law is ensured, business environment keeps improving, and Hong Kong has had a major turn from chaos to stability.
On external policy, Wang defended a draft foreign relations law under which China can take countermeasures as the West tries to contain Beijing.
和这种霸凌行径，被国际社会普遍批评为长臂管辖。
Such bullying acts are widely criticized in the international community as long-arm jurisdiction. China stands firmly against such practices. It has introduced a number of laws and regulations to counter the containment, suppression, and interference in its internal affairs.
Wang added that China's defense spending is lower than the world average, and increases are appropriate and reasonable. The NPC annual session opens at 9 a.m. tomorrow and lasts for 8.5 days. The nearly 3,000 delegates will review the government's work reports and discuss a plan to reform institutions under the State Council. They will also endorse a new premier and vice premiers.
Locally, 3 former members of a group that organized June the 4th vigils have been found guilty of failing to provide information requested by National Security Police. They will be sentenced next Saturday after mitigation, Janice Low reports.
Former Vice Chairwoman Chow Hang-tong, along with committee members Choi Hon-kwang and Tang Ok-kwan, from the now defunct Hong Kong Alliance in support of Patriotic Democratic Movements of China, face up to 6 months in jail. They were convicted today in West Kowloon Magistracy of failing to provide information which police wanted under the national security law. The trio, who were accused of acting as foreign agents, were arrested in 2021 after dismissing the police request. Principal Magistrate Peter Law said being a foreign agent is not a crime, but he believed the information sought struck a balance between preventing threats to national security and safeguarding rights. Law said police had reasonable grounds to believe that the Hong Kong Alliance was a foreign agent because of its background and links with locals and foreigners. He said the defendants showed they had no intention to submit the information when they held a press conference and published an open letter. The 3 will be sentenced next Saturday. Chow remains in custody, while Tang and Choi are on bail. 2 other alliance members, Leung Kam Wai and Chan To Wai, pleaded guilty earlier and were jailed for 3 months each. Janice Low, HKIBC.
A day after an inferno at a building under construction in Chinsha was put out, some scaffolding caught fire again. Residents living near the high-rise on Middle Road said the blaze on the podium broke out at around 9 a.m. Firefighters used a ladder to reach the spot and extinguish the fire. Workers continued to clear the area of burnt bamboo scaffolding that fell to the ground from the 48-story structure. Some exits in East Chinsha Station are still shut following the fire at the site of the former Mariners Club. Middle Road between Nathan Road and Salisbury Road remain closed. Overseas, at least 15 people, including 2 children, have been killed in a fire at a fuel storage facility in the Indonesian capital. The blaze in Jakarta engulfed a densely populated neighborhood, forcing thousands to evacuate, Sachin Kadvi reports.
It was around dinner time yesterday when people in a densely populated neighborhood in Jakarta fled in panic after a fire broke out in a fuel storage depot owned by state-run energy firm Pertamina. More than 250 firefighters and 52 fire engines were deployed to battle the blaze in Tanah Merah in the north of the Indonesian capital. The narrow streets made it difficult for fire engines to reach the flames. Aerial footage of the gutted neighborhood highlighted the large-scale destruction to property. Bodies were pulled out this morning as rescuers searched for anyone still missing. Officials confirmed 15 deaths, while 50 others were admitted to hospital with burns. More than 600 people lost their homes and were given temporary shelter at several government offices and a stadium. Investigators believe the fire was caused by a ruptured pipeline, possibly after a lightning strike. Pertamina has a tainted safety record and industrial accidents occurred previously at some of its other facilities. The storage site which caught fire provides 25% of Indonesia's fuel. But company executives said supplies will not be affected. Sachin Katwi, HKIBC.
Protesters have clashed with police in the Greek capital Athens as the public blamed a lack of safety measures for a deadly train crash earlier this week. A gathering outside Parliament started peacefully before violence erupted. Demonstrators hurled petrol bombs at police, who responded with tear gas. The area soon resembled a battle zone. Protests in other Greek cities were mainly peaceful, but police maintained a heavy presence. The head-on collision between a passenger train and a freight train 380 kilometers north of Athens killed 57 people, many of them students. The government said the crash on Tuesday was caused by human error and charged a railway official with manslaughter. The United Nations High Commissioner has painted a bleak picture of life in the occupied West Bank and warned that it will worsen if there's no drastic improvement.
The situation in the occupied Palestinian territory is a tragedy. A tragedy above all for the Palestinian people. Over half a century of occupation has led to widening dispossession, deepening deprivation, and recurring and severe violations of their rights, including the right to life. Nobody could wish to live this way or imagine that forcing people into conditions of such desperation can lead to an enduring solution.
The frank comments came as Israeli troops clashed with Palestinians in the Silwan neighborhood of Jerusalem. It was the latest Israeli military action against Palestinians, underlying the concerns of the human rights chief that violence hurts all sides. Ukraine says it is holding out in the eastern city of Bakhmut, which Russian forces have surrounded. Ukrainian tanks have been deployed around the city in one of the most fiercest battles since the Russian invasion. Only one route is open, according to Russia's Wagner private army. But Ukraine vowed to continue fighting. Much of Bakhmut is in ruins after months of artillery pounding, and the few remaining civilians are running out of essential supplies. On to the weather now. Fine and dry tomorrow with some haze in the morning. Temperatures will range between 17 and 24 degrees. And now let's take a look at the weather around the world. And that's our main news for Saturday night. Join us for more news at 11. I'm Chloe Feng. Good night.